Hello and special guest today. This is a really fun episode to introduce. We're here with Josh Braun. There's a lot of noise on LinkedIn. Most of it is trash that isn't worth paying attention to. But I didn't mention this before we hit record, but Josh, your stuff on LinkedIn is like, it's maybe like you and one other guy who I'm like looking forward to the next thing. And that's a big deal. So first, on a personal note, thanks for making my LinkedIn feed a lot more helpful in my life. And if you're new, Josh is I think of him as a sales consultant worth paying attention to. He teaches people how to sell without selling their soul. He's got a free book over at joshbraun.com, but we're just excited to have him in the room with us. Josh, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Um, yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jeremy. I'm just like kid in a candy store. I'm gonna like jump right in unless you want to
Go
pull
no,
me
go
back a
for
little
it.
bit.
Super to have you, Josh.
All right. So
Nice to see
Josh, the king of interrupting. Let's dive straight into it. So our listeners are here to, start sales conversations essentially with strangers. And one of your approaches that I've paid a lot of attention to lately, poke the bear. Maybe you could tell us what that is.
Yeah, so if you've ever gone to a mall and you've been walking to go somewhere, and one of those mall kiosk people locks eyes with you and says, "You have beautiful brown eyes. Can I ask you a question?" You're going to shy away because you know what's coming next. You know, you're going to convinced to wear some sea scrub on your hands and get sold some sea scrub. So this idea of when you start to pitch products to people, when you say, try my sea scrub or in a cold call, when you start to pitch or convince at the top, what happens is people go into the zone of resistance. It's a natural reflex reaction to losing autonomy. So when I first started selling, like most sellers, I would call and I would give my 30-second elevator pitch, my value proposition. And I learned pretty early on that most of the time I was getting shut down. And what I later learned is that it's a convincing reflex. People don't like being convinced. Now contrast that with a story that happened to me many moons ago. I'm in the same mall, but this time my wife wants to return something, and we were going to grab some dinner afterwards in the town center at True Food. It's a restaurant. And to just kill some time, I walked into a fit to run store, not needing anything. So if the store associate said, "What brings you in today?" I would have said, "I'm good." If she said, "Let me show you these new sneakers we just got in that are super light," I would have said, "I'm good." If she would have said, "You got any problems with your sneakers?" I would have said, "I'm good." But she didn't do any of those things. Instead of making statements and convincing, she looked down at my sneakers and she asked the question. And she said, "Are you a runner?" That's very hard for me to raise an objection when someone's asking me a question. I can't say I have a vendor for that because it doesn't make sense. I go, "Yeah, I am a runner." And then she said, "Are you training for any races?" Question number two. And I said, "Actually, I am. I'm training for a half marathon." And then she said this: "You've probably had a running gait test." And I said, "What's that?" And I have video of this that I show in my workshops. I'm on a treadmill 2 minutes later in the store taking a running gait test. She videos the thing and she freezes the frame and she zooms in on my ankles. And she goes, "You notice anything?" I go, "Yeah, it looks like my ankles are overpronated. So what?" And she said, "Well, the problem is if you run in sneakers that are not made for pronated feet, especially when you run over 6 or 7 miles, you increase the chances of getting injuries like plantar fasciitis and runner's knee. If you'd like, I could check your sneakers to see if they're made for pronated feet." And about 6 minutes later, I'm spending $180 on new sneakers and insoles because what she's doing is she's poking the bear. She's asking a question in a neutral way to expose a problem with the current way. And the takeaway here is no matter what you sell, everyone's got sneakers today, meaning they're getting the job done. So we have a vendor for that, which is what a lot of people hear on a cold call is a reaction to calling and selling sneakers.
Hmm.
But if you were to say, "What kind of sneakers do you have?" You're not going to hear we have a vendor for that because if I said, "You guys, are you running in Nikes or Ons or like another kind of like Adidas?" No, I'm running in Nikes. Versus we have the best Nikes. I got sneakers for that. So the poke the bear approach is asking a question about a potential problem with the current way. One more example. I love to wash my car on the weekends. So if you were to call me on a cold call and try to sell me a car wash bucket, I'm going to say I'm not interested and I'm good. But if you were to cold call me and say this, hey, Josh, when you wash your car, do you wash it yourself or you have someone else wash it? Oh, I wash it myself. Using one bucket or two? I'm using a bucket, one bucket. So, Josh, I don't know if you're seeing this, but a lot of times when people use a bucket and a sponge to wash their car, dirt can settle to the bottom, get trapped in the sponge, and can scratch their car. How are you avoiding that from happening when you wash your car? And that's going to make me pause and think, well, I guess I just rub it off. Like, what do you mean? Oh, you've probably heard of a grit guard. What's that? Well, that's this little thing that goes into a bucket like a cheese grater, and you rub your sponge on it, and it settles to the bottom of the bucket and off your car. See the approach there? It's you're asking a question that's exposing a knowledge gap. Same thing my contractor did when I told him he was 20% more than the other two bids I got. Instead of him saying, you get what you pay for, which is going to put me in the zone of resistance, he leaned back and said, would it be okay if I ask you a couple questions about the bids? And I said, sure. Are they using Redgate as a moisture barrier for your wood floors? I don't know. Are they using solid doors or hollow doors? Because they sound different when they close. They do? Are they replacing your copper pipes or using your existing copper pipes when they remodel your bathroom? I'm not sure. Again, a knowledge gap that allowed me to create my own disconnect and then lean forward. So the art here is coming up with that question on a cold call that illuminates or pokes the bear in a neutral way to get people to scratch their head and think, what do you mean?
Beautiful.
I love that. All right, we could end here and like this is already,
Okay.
top
Thanks,
10.
Josh.
Yeah.
That was brilliant.
No, it's great. So let's unpack it. But again, Jeremy, I'm kidding. Candy story. Jump in, man. What I want to hear like you react to that.
I love it. I actually been using that, especially on LinkedIn DMs. So I basically say like, oh, well, what do you use for, sending emails type of thing. And I kind of have to preface it like, hey, it's not a pitch. There's no string attached. It may sound like a pitch, but, I got to ask, like, what do you guys are using? And, they're engaged in a nice conversation. And then I use that primarily not to sell, actually. I use that primarily to learn as to like, how do you find that tool? Like, what is it you actually like? So it's more like for research. Like, I'm pretty bad at selling.
But hold on, I think if you use it right, it's more for selling than anything, right? I mean, make an argument that it's actually the better way to approach a lot of these sales conversations,
Yeah, I think the underpinning here is if there's no problem with the current way, there's no reason for me to switch.
Yep.
And sometimes, especially when we're cold calling, the people that we're calling typically don't have a problem because they'd be calling us. So we have to, what I call poke the bear. We have to know what the potential weakness is that they might not know about that can hurt them. So with cold email, if I was calling for someone, I might say, hey, John, I don't know what you guys are seeing over there now. That phrase that I use a lot subconsciously says there's no assumptions here and there's no finger pointing here. But a lot of sales enablement folks I speak with and some of the data that we're seeing suggests that a good percentage of cold emails that people are sending are ending up in spam filters. I saw some stat like maybe 60 or 70%, even when you have DKIM and SPF set up, all the things. How are you avoiding spam filters today? And then I'm just going to shut the front door and listen, and let's assume you have something that, solves that problem.
So that's a warm-up thing, right?
Yes, or whatever the thing is. But the idea here is everyone's using something for email right now, whether it's Outreach or Outlook
Correct.
or some other thing or whatever the thing, or spread. If I'm calling for Captivate IQ, when you guys calculate commissions, looks like you have 120 reps over there. Are you guys using spreadsheets in Excel or is it more of an automated process? Oh, we're using spreadsheets. Jeremy, you've been in RevOps for 10 years. You've probably looked into automating it. Oh, we have. And then I'm going to say something like this. Oh, it seems like your comp plan was too complicated to be automated. And then what usually happens is they correct me. well, it's not that, it's X, Y, and Z. And then perhaps there's something there, or there's no problem to solve, or there's a reason why I'm not a fit, which is a perfectly good outcome for a cold call.
So can we maybe unpack, Jeremy? I want to go back to that like opening line. I just want to see if Josh has any notes on that. What are you guys using for cold outreach? And stop me, Jeremy, if that's not how you worded it. But Josh, I'd love to hear your take on, is that a good bear poke?
So I would probably be a little more specific. Hey, when you guys are doing outreach, are you guys using like a tool like a Sales Loft?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Or like an outlet, or like an outreach? Or is it more like setting up tasks in like Salesforce and following up manually? And they're going to say, we're using outreach. Now, if someone's using outreach, that might not be an ideal customer for you. It might be
right.
a heavy lift. So I might want to find people that are doing
Salesforce
it manually.
integration, or,
right. It's a whole thing. I might want to
yeah.
find people that are like doing it manually with spreadsheets and tasks in Salesforce, you know? So, yeah.
Similar to that sales associate who said, "Are you a runner?" If you would have said, "No, couch potato," she probably would have said, "Hey, look around, have a good day."
100%, and that's a perfect.
Yeah.
No is a not a fit is
you
a
don't have to
perfectly
close
good
everyone.
outcome if determined early. Where it's a problem is
True.
what I call talking vegans into eating meat, and it's something I do in my workshop. It's for salespeople.
Yeah.
You know, I do this thing. I'm like, yeah, you're selling grass-fed beef. I'm always amazed by this. I have this post that I did. I did this poll, like, are you selling grass-fed beef? And someone says, I'm a vegan. How do you overcome the objection? And 90% of salespeople tried to overcome the objection.
That's crazy.
Versus, maybe I should call meat eaters.
That's right.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing that we got something, Jack and I, about the subject line. A lot of people are trying to sort of like confuse people and stay very abstract and stuff like that. And we're like, no, it could be like business proposal, you know, webcast interview. At least, you know, make it clear for the person, because if they don't open, then that's fine. They're not interested in that topic. Like, there's no amount of things you can say that will, like you say, like a vegetarian, you know, eating meat or whatever. Like, no amount of what you're going to say is going to really help. So sometimes they try to add confusion and so on to get optimizing for the wrong metrics, which are like, you know, opening my emails. Like, who cares?
Yeah. It's the biggest thing that I see is, what is the terrible, no good, very bad thing that happens if people keep running in their sneakers? And people have a hard time answering it, because it's usually, we help you run faster, and that's not gonna do it. It's got to be a terrible, no good, very bad. One of the things I do in my workshop is I say this. I said, I didn't want to participate in this. I didn't want to have Venmo. So people will raise their hand, or Zelly. Okay, great. I want you to open it up. Here's my Zelly name, and I'll put yours in my phone. And I have a coin here. I want you guys to check it, see if it's a real coin. If someone checks it, heads, tails. Then I take out $2,000 cash. And I say, we're going to flip this coin. You get to call it. If you call it right, I'm going to give you the 2,000. But if you call it wrong, you're going to Venmo me the 2,000, and I'm going to put the 2,000 in, and I'm going to hit the send button. I'm going to be holding your phone. Who wants to play?
No.
And most people won't play that, because the fear of loss is stronger than the gain. So we have to poke at the problem that people don't know about. Just like what that person did. The sponge is another example of that. You know, hey, Josh, when you're going down to Miami, I know you like to see concerts down there. Are you driving yourself, taking an Uber, or can you book a spot in advance so you don't have to pay $50 to park at the venue? I'm like, what do you mean book a spot in advance? What is that? It's another way to do it. That's a product called Spot Hero that lets you book a time in advance, right? That's another way to do it, is to common thing that's a little unusual that people will be like, what? It's another framework you can use to poke the bear.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, do you ever feel like you need to disclose who you are and why you want to know that information? I'm tempted to throw a PS underneath saying, I'm asking so that maybe I'm overcoming this objection, like, who the hell's asking, you know?
Yeah. So we're jumping into sort of midway through the cold call with this, because we started out that poke the carrots really meat, but there's an opening to a call as well when someone picks up and says hello. So I'm not going to just say that when someone says hello. It will be a little jarring. When Jeremy picks up, Jeremy says hello, I might say this. So Jeremy, just say hello.
Hi.
Jeremy?
Yep.
Hey, Jeremy, this is Josh Braun with Acme.
I'm sorry, do I know you?
No, you don't. I am a rep actually calling about quick mail. You're still the developer for that. Am I right?
Currently, yes.
That's how I would open it. Then I would go into the poke the bear question.
Got
There you
it.
go. What do you know, you probably, not sure you're seeing this, but you probably have, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you feel like maybe let's go back and table the phone channel for a moment. I'm just thinking here, LinkedIn DM, email. If it doesn't apply, you can, shoot it down too. But I'm curious in that, let's say you have a nice intro, you ask the poke the bear question. Do you think it's best to leave it as is or to provide some context just to share why you're asking about what email setup they're currently having?
So it depends on what channel we're using. So if we're using the phone, what usually happens on the phone is someone will say, what is this? What do you do? And I'm waiting for that moment because at that moment, the brain is now inquiring versus me filling the head with
Cool.
information.
Love that.
So is that what you guys do? Yeah. What we do in one sentence is we have a grate that goes onto the bottom of the bucket so that when you rub your sponge on it, the dirt settles to the bottom off your car so you don't scratch it.
And you provide that once they ask it for you.
Yeah, once they ask it, once they're kind of leaning forward. If someone were to say, I'm using Outreach, I might say, man, those guys have been around for like 7 years or 10 years. They're like pretty much created the category. Like, what do you like about it? Mm-hmm. And then I might say, is there anything you wish it could do that it's not doing? I don't suppose so. Mm-hmm. And then I'll shut them out. And what happens most of the time when you say that is you'll hear something, a little nugget there. So yeah. I'm sort of like, I don't suppose there's anything you wish it could do. That thing does everything in the world. They've been like, a lot of people using it. I don't suppose there's anything you wish it could do that it doesn't do. And then I might poke the bear and say, I don't know if this is happening with you, but a lot of people that are using Outreach, X, Y, and Z. Now, it can't, with this Outreach example, it can't be a small minor problem. And the reason it can't be a small minor problem is because people live with small minor problems all the time because limited resources and its switching costs are high. Like I have a Pixel that's out on my back bedroom TV. It's a problem, but I rarely watch that TV. And when I do, I barely notice the Pixel. So I'm not buying a new TV right now because I have other things that are more expensive. So we always have to find big expensive problems. With regards to quick mail, I don't know enough about the product now. It's been a while since I've used it, but I probably, if I heard someone was using Outreach, I'd probably move on and I try to find someone who is not using that, maybe someone that's just doing it manually, maybe a startup or whatever. If someone's using like a sales, but there's also the possibility that they're unhappy. So that's why I would ask some of those questions to see like, man, they really don't, or I could ask a question that gets them to think, geez, what? And it usually can't be money because if I'm going to save 20% and I have the risk of having to uncouple all this stuff, it's usually not enough of a motivator to get me to switch.
Yeah, money rarely works, for those things.
How do you like kind of workshop with a team, Josh, that's like, I'll be honest, we got a couple pain points we solve, but, we kind of switch back and forth between them. How do you kind of think through which pain point you need to double down on?
So it depends on who we're talking to. So one of the mistakes I see sales teams make 9 times out of 10 is when they're making calls or sending emails, there's a mix of different types of titles and they're sending the same message to everyone. Well, a CMO cares about something that a marketing director cares about, than a CEO director cares about. So I was doing a workshop with Lee and Associates, which they're brokers. They lease out buildings for businesses. And the CEO, Jeff, was told by a client of theirs that had been a client for 3 or 4 years that they were switching brokers. And instead of defending the sale and saying, give us another chance or why are you leaving? He simply leaned back and he said, sounds like we messed up. And they opened up and shared some more. And he listened for 7 or 8 minutes. Just listened to understand. And then he poked the bear. We were doing this workshop. And this is I'm going to butcher this a little bit. He said it better than I did. But after they were heard and understood, after 7 or 8 minutes, he said, hey, look, I know you guys are leasing a space on Lions for environmental purposes. You're doing like dye in there. And what we've been seeing is that when the tenants move out, which I know yours are in next month, the owner of the building is getting hit with $30,000 to $40,000 in remediation costs for cleanup. How are you getting ahead of that? And this person was like, what? I don't, and he was able to get back in. Now, if he started with that, it wouldn't have worked as well.
Why not?
Because the
Why
person
not?
didn't feel understood first.
Yeah. They
I
feel
have to feel
defensive. It's
understood.
like, oh, you're going to try to get me or like
Right.
to lie
I
to
got to
me
feel
or
understood
whatever.
first. It's like
Yeah.
if you walk into a restaurant and they say you're having the Chateaubriand. I'm like, dude, you didn't even ask me if I eat meat. It's like going to a
Right.
travel agent on preferences. So I got to feel understood first before I'm going to trust what you recommend.
Okay. So let's say our goal is to get people on this call. And we know that the folks that we're kind of reaching out to are brokers that have tenant turnover. And every time there's a tenant turnover, the previous owner has to pay, 30, 40 grand for this environmental fee. I mean, that's a heck of a pain point. It almost feels like you could kind of lean let me try an attempt here. Hey, Josh, you're probably aware that when your next tenant turns over in December, Acme is going to, probably have 30 to 40, 30, 40 grand in environmental fees. How are you guys like going about reducing that number a bit?
Yeah, that's the idea. But what I would do is I don't want to make the person feel guilty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to soften a little bit. I don't know if this is the case with, I don't know if this is the case with you, but what we've been seeing with other people in the same situation is this: when the tenants move out,
Right.
when they're in buildings for environmental use, you probably have this covered, obviously. They're getting hit with these fees for cleanup. How are you getting in front of that today? I'm going to assume they're getting in front of it somehow.
Amazing.
Rather than you are doing this wrong. I don't want people to feel they're doing it wrong. It's the same thing with the quick mail example. If I start bashing outreach,
Yeah.
and I start going to pain, it's going to be a problem because maybe I put it in. Like maybe I was the one that, so I'm going to say, wow, what do you like about it? You guys been using, were you like an early adopter? Those guys are like, they were pretty much like first, they kind of created.
Dinosaurs.
And then I'm going to say, I don't suppose there's anything that you wish it was doing better. Like those guys are pretty perfect. And then what you'll find is sometimes people, well, I wouldn't say they're perfect. It's like, I got a great call from a real estate agent a month ago. It was phenomenal. Guy calls me up. Josh, yes. Do you still own the property on Marbella Drive? I do. Well, there's a lot of demand for homes in that neighborhood. They're going for actually above listing. I don't suppose you're looking to sell it. I'm not. I like it here. And what this guy said was this. It was brilliant. I wrote it down, wrote a post about it. He goes, oh, it sounds like it's your forever home. And my desire to correct kicked in. I don't know about forever.
You can't help it.
I want to go to Colorado or a mountain town one of these days. I don't want to like die here. And he's like, hey, no problem. He goes, I know your time's not right. From time to time, I send out comps in the area. If you'd like, I can add you to the list. And I gave my email.
Beautiful.
And now every once in a while, I get these comps. And when I'm looking to sell, which I might one day, I'm going to think of him. But that's the phrase, which is like, it's probably your effort for home. I don't suppose there's anything like you'd want it to do better.
Is that a question or a statement, Josh?
Statement. So it's called Chris Voss of Never Split the Difference fame calls this a label. It's also called emotional echoing. If you look at the literature, what you're doing is you're describing the underlying emotion that the other person's feeling, and you can practice this in your personal life. So like the other night, my wife's like, let's go get Japanese because I don't want Japanese. So I said, we've been eating too much of it. Like you're sick of it. She's like, yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to
I'm not sick of it. Yeah. Right.
Trying to describe what she's feeling in that moment. And if you're wrong, if you guess wrong, the beauty of the approach is you get corrected. Either way, you get to more truth.
There's a couple of things that are interesting in the technique you're using. There is obviously prefacing. So it's like, hey, I don't want to assume anything here type of thing, so, which is really great. Again, lower the defense. And then I got like 3 post-its next to my computers. And it all starts with like, it sounds like, it looks like, so it sounds like you've been giving it a lot of thoughts, lately, Josh. And it's just like, it just opened up people, which is amazing. I love that.
Yes, that's emotional echoing. Someone says I have to think about it. The traditional sales response in every textbook is a lot of times when people say they need to think about it, it really means they don't have a lot of information. I have the information you need. So what information do you need to make a decision? Like that's a very typical, traditional way to handle objections. What I would suggest is that when you do that, you're going to get a fake answer. You're going to pressure people. They're going to go into the zone of resistance. And even if they agree to a next step, they're not showing up because you're taking their autonomy away.
They won't
A better
recommend
approach,
you.
yeah, a better approach when someone says, I need to think about it, is you might just lean back and say, sounds like you're weighing a bunch of options right now. Seems like you got a lot on your plate. You're not exactly sure if the juice is worth the squeeze.
Or I might go like, sounds like this isn't a decision you have to make this week.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Love that. Okay. Jeremy, I'm curious what your other two post-its are.
I didn't want to say the two other ones. So
that's okay. I got two. I feel like I've got.
I'll tell you. So one is like, it sounds like there is nothing you can do to change your mind.
That's a leading question.
Is it? Interesting.
Yes, because I know where you're going. So you might say something like this. I don't suppose there are any events and circumstances that would cause you to review what your options are with regards to email.
Good one. And then the last one I have is, it sounds like it's important to you.
Depending on what they say.
Yeah,
right. So this is a skill. This is a very difficult skill, actually. So I had Chris Voss on my podcast.
That's why I got Spot-Stits.
Yeah, it's a hard skill because emotional echoing requires you to feel what the other person's feeling. You're not barking back what they said. So I'll give you an example. Chris Voss was on my podcast a couple years ago, and he asked me this question: "What are you passionate about?" And I go, at the time I was doing triathlons. He goes, "How come you're passionate about triathlons?" I go, "Well, I was doing them with my dad, and we were going to train for a race together, but he passed away before he got to do it. He got cancer. So I was doing them in his honor." And then Chris Voss said nothing for what seemed like 10 seconds. But when I watched the podcast, it was like 3. And he said this in a very calm voice: "Sounds like you were really close with your dad." And I kind of welled up a little bit. And I was like, I had to stop the podcast. He goes, "That's serotonin." When you can label how someone's feeling more than they can describe
they can do it.
Yeah. You create this like, wow, you really get me. And when people feel like you get them, they begin to trust you. And without trust, there's no transaction.
So Josh, just curious, man, Chris Voss is the hero of heroes, but what would have been nicer to hear or more important to hear from Chris? Sounds like you were really close to your dad, and I love that. What if he would have said, "What was your dad like?"
That would have been nice.
Better?
Yeah. I don't know better. You know, I probably would have spoken a little bit about it, but emotional echoing is a little bit of is the skill of, in psychology, if you've ever been to therapy, you know, psychologists do this all. Emotional echoing is trying to describe what the other person is feeling. And in doing so, you make people feel heard and understood. I'm saying, "What was he like?" It's going to draw me out some more, but it doesn't necessarily make me feel understood. Right?
Really?
Like, it doesn't make me feel understood to talk about my dad. When you nail how I'm feeling, you're like, wow, this person gets me. Like, I'll give you another example I do for my workshop. I have an actress that I use, and she's a single mom. She has 2 kids under the age of 5, and she comes home from work, and she's going to say something, and I want you to respond to it. Okay, Jack? So it's a single mom. She has 2 kids. All I want to do when I get home from work is drink a bottle of wine and smoke cigarettes.
You know, you're a single mom. You got 2 kids. I think if they're in bed, rock and roll, mama. I don't know, Josh. Maybe
give it a go. Give it a go, Jack.
I want you to use emotional. I want you to use emotional echoing.
Oh shit! I'm sorry.
So what is she feeling? You think? Sounds like, it seems like, it feels like.
Sounds like raising 2 small kids alone is exhausting.
That's better.
There you go. Thank you for that. Sorry, man. I'm like jumping into husband mode.
Now, women happen to be, I don't know why this is, are way better at this than we are. They're just, they're tuned in more. You know, what other feelings might this person, if you had to go into her shoes, which it would be hard for you and me to go into, but if you can go into her, what other things is she feeling? Why would she just want to come home
There's a bit of, is there some bit of guilt or something like that because of, you know, willing to, you know, to smoke and drink even though she shouldn't, like for her own health and stuff?
How can we validate it? You just want to, you just want to unwind.
Yeah.
You certainly don't want saying
So it
someone
seems
saying
like you have
shouldn't.
a lot right now on your plate, right?
Yes, yes.
It's
You
like,
certainly don't want to say you shouldn't be drinking and
no,
smoking
of
if you have two
course.
kids, which is what a lot of people do. They try to solve and fix.
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Genius. Um, a short aside, I used to work with the woman who started the Truth campaigns. When she was in high school, she was like doing stuff with the Obama administration and making like get kids to stop smoking. And I was like, all right, you were there. Like, what's the best way to get a teenager to quit cigarettes? She said, you can't use stats. You can't give a presentation. The best thing you can do is when they light up, you say, hey, can I have one? You sit down, you have a cigarette with you, and you're like, these freaking companies are making so much money off us, aren't they? And they're killing us while they're doing it. And she said, if you have a lit cigarette with them, they start to say, you know what, you're damn right, I'm done with this. And there's something related here.
Wait, how old is the kid? Like an 18-year-old?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I might do on this? I might have a 11-year-old walk up to that 18-year-old and
Yeah,
say,
and ask them.
can I have a cigarette? I'd like to start smoking.
There was an
I love
advertisement
that.
like that, and I think they couldn't put it because
Wow.
like the lobby actually pushed,
Is
made
that
a lot of
right?
pressure. Yeah, because it was working so well.
Wow.
Yeah,
I love that. Gentlemen, I want to be
yeah, respectful
respectful
of time.
of our slot here, and I do have one kind of closing thought. And Jeremy, I hope we can circle it up with you and Josh too before we wrap. But what I'm hearing, Josh, is kind of like three takeaways. It's very important to disarm, and you can do that by saying things like, "Not sure if this is your experience too." Wonderful. And then there's two other kind of phrases I've heard today, and they're kind of counters. On one side, you might say like, it sounds like there's nothing outreach could do better for you. Like they're great. It can't be improved. So it's almost like leading them towards like this is perfect, and you're the man with the plan. And
Well,
on
no,
the
it's,
other,
it's actually what,
yeah,
what you're doing there is you're trying to see if you can elicit a correction. Because usually
beautiful,
when you say, is it perfect? It sounds like it's checking every single box. Well, I don't know about every single box. And you go, no, right? Like that, that's,
wonderful,
that's what you're looking
yeah,
for potential problems. We're not assuming there's a problem. We're detached from the outcome, but our
yeah,
job is to poke. Like that person at the
beautiful,
running store, she had to ask the question. She had to poke to see that's our job because people might not be aware of things.
yeah.
The
And
intention.
the third thing that I'm hearing is like instead of leading them for correction, you could say like talking about it. You probably have a way to go about reducing the 30 to 40K investment, right? Like just talking about the pain, but in a way that like what are you doing to prevent crud from going on your car and scratching it, right?
Yeah. So
Um,
what we're doing there subconsciously is we're assuming that they're doing something. They're in the know. So in the real estate example, we have these remediation costs, and the phrase I use at the end is, "How are you currently getting ahead of that?" Meaning, the
Nice.
subtext is there. Of course, this is on your radar. How are you currently? How are you currently, Josh? How do you know your sneakers aren't made for pronated feet? Well, I don't. What do you mean, right? Or what do you? Well, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Maybe they're on top of it. So the beauty of this approach
yeah,
is we're not assuming anything's broken. We're assuming they're on top of it, and we're going to let them
love that.
correct us if they're not. That's going to protect the ego.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Ego is super important. Yeah.
yeah. Which leads us right into psychedelics. No, I'm just that's another That's another podcast. Everyone, tune in again if you want to hear that.
That's
One.
right. They won't get the private joke here. But one last thing, Josh, if I may, before we're leaving.
Sure.
You've been doing like tons and tons of trainings with salespeople. What would you say, in your view, are the easiest skills to grasp and the hardest one to get?
I don't think any of the skills that salespeople have to learn are easy. I think a lot of times people take them for granted.
Hmm.
I have to listen. I have to know how to speak. I have to know how to communicate. I am learning how to play the guitars now, and knowing how to play guitar requires a tremendous amount of dexterity and skill. But I can't make music now until I can know where to put my fingers first. So, like a cold call, I have to know what to say, and I have to have belief that I actually can solve a real problem. And then I can work on my tonality. So all these things are layered, and it takes a tremendous amount of time to be able to learn these skills. And so I would say patience with the craft. And if there was one maybe piece of advice that I could give people with regards to skills, it would be to find someone in your organization that has been having success month after month and just sit next to them. Like when I used to coach a sales team of 18 years, 18 reps, when someone would come to me and say they're struggling, just sit next to Lainey Tick. Just sit next to her. Just do what she's doing.
Brilliant, beautiful.
Well, yeah, Josh, you've shared so much value to our listeners, to our viewers. I'm really grateful that you gave us your time today. And please, everyone, if you enjoyed, do two things. Do yourself a favor. Follow Josh on LinkedIn. You'll get more of his good stuff. And also, he's got a free book over at joshbraun.com. Well worth it. And yeah, thanks so much, Josh. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. Jeremy, it's been a while, man. We shouldn't let a decade go by until we talk again.
100%. 100%. We'll catch up.
Are you still in Switzerland?
Yes.
Wow. Should I go over there? Should I get to Switzerland?
Yeah, come. I'm traveling a lot, but yeah, you should come. You should come. And if you're still listening, the listeners, then drop me a mail.
drop Jeremy a mail in Switzerland. Nice meeting you guys.
All right.
All right. See you, Josh.